You're listening to The Flickcast, a pop culture podcast about stuff nerds love. I am Chris Ulrich, and of course, with me, thank goodness, as always, Joe Dilworth. Joe, good afternoon, good morning, something? I don't know. Is it morning where we are? Yes, it's morning.
What was it in Truman Show's like good morning, and in case I don't see you later, good afternoon, good evening,
That's what
and
I
good
was trying to
night.
go for. I
So
couldn't remember the dialogue from Truman Show. That's sad. Okay, I'm a
yes,
sad person. I just don't understand things.
you have way more other you have a lot of other movie quotes and stuff in your head, I'm sure.
I
So
have a lot of
yeah,
other fine qualities, as people say.
absolutely,
You're not a
yes.
total moron. You're still okay. I wouldn't say
I'm,
total moron, at least. So, anyway.
exactly. I mean, your hair is great. Let's start there. So
Your hair is great. The music was amazing in your show. Oh wait,
yes.
no. That's the usual compliments, right? Your music was amazing. So
the
anyway,
sounds the soundscape when you talk is just great, and the cinematography when
yeah,
you're getting in the car is just, it can't be beat. So
it's that whole like single take of you walking from the house, getting in the car, and driving away. Amazing.
oh yeah, that's yeah.
It reminded me of Touch of Evil and the player and all these other tracking shots that are amazing. Touch of Evil is an
Sure,
amazing tracking shot if you've never seen it.
it
It's
is
amazing,
actually. Yeah.
and how they managed to accomplish it without Steadicam, without anything back in the day, in the 50s. It's very impressive. Orson
Well,
Welles was pretty good at filmmaking. It turns out.
we should, because we're going to be talking about Expanse later. And that's something I want to make sure to mention is the great tracking shot. Unless we mentioned it last week, but
No, we were going to
uh,
talk about it, but we didn't. So yeah,
yeah,
this is going to
okay,
be. We're going to do the Expanse. We're going to talk about the penultimate episode and then the finale of this season and how things went, kind of the way we thought, a little bit,
yeah, yeah,
and spoilers. But I think first we should dive into WandaVision for a minute or two, or
yeah,
based on last week's episode, like an hour and a half, and just go for it, man. So did you
yes.
watched WandaVision? I assume, right?
Oh yeah, I did
Okay,
absolutely.
so WandaVision episode 5, a very special episode of WandaVision. So, first of all, I just want to say that as a child of the 80s, as you are, I know, I feel like they totally nailed the 80s music vibe, and the whole thing was like perfectly done.
Oh
Don't you think?
yeah, I mean they completely did, from the mock-up opening credits to whenever they had like the the deep discussions in the show within a show. They had the nice little piano. This is a special moment
Right. Yeah,
music and
we need to get serious music. Yeah.
yes,
So
yes.
was the house supposed to be which house was it supposed to be? Was it Growing Pains or was it the Keaton's house? I can't remember which show that Michael J. Fox show was. I can't remember the
Family
name of it.
Ties. I think
Family
it was
Ties. Okay.
mostly Family Ties. I mean, it had some elements of. It's weird because I've kind of paid attention, and it's essentially been the same set for all of the sitcoms they've done. They've just like moved things around or added to it, because like the kitchen was completely, at least in this one, was the exact same as it was in the kitchen in the first episode, just updated. So
And in color.
yeah, exactly. So it
Oh,
feels like,
I'm sorry. Before we go any further, we should just say spoilers if you haven't
oh
seen episode 5 of WandaVision. Sorry, everybody. I
yeah,
should have
we're
said
gonna
that before.
massively spoil it because there's stuff we got to talk about. So
Yes, there's stuff we got to talk about. So yeah, spoiler alert. You can skip ahead or watch the episode and then come back, or whatever. Or if you haven't seen The Expanse, you might just miss this whole episode. So anyway, go
well,
ahead. Sorry, Joe.
sure. But yeah, I think it feels like they've kept the same set, but just redressed, not redressed it, but they have. There are physical elements like the stairway and stuff like that that they've added or changed as they've gone along, but some have stayed the same. But I just, a lot of the stuff that they like, even the Dick Van Dyke Show and Bewitched and all that, I used to watch as a kid because it was on reruns and it was always fun to watch. But obviously, watched in first run, as they call it, Family Ties, Growing Pains, and all that kind of stuff. So the sense of nostalgia is just like huge. And
Yeah, definitely.
I think more importantly, though, like you said, they have just nailed. They kind of like walk the thin line of paying homage to and kind of satirizing not just the sitcoms themselves, but kind of the era in which they took place. So it's just whoever's right. Obviously, the internets could tell me who's writing all of this, but they're doing a fabulous job, and have
Yeah, it's
obviously done
really
a lot of work on it. So
yeah,
well done.
it's really amazing actually. If you haven't, a lot of people are probably missing it because they didn't experience this stuff firsthand, and they probably haven't watched a lot of reruns of '80s sitcoms as you and I have. But yeah, it's like the music is they nailed the music, they nailed the open titles, they nailed the look of everything, the clothes that people are wearing, the sort of the whole vibe of it. Um, it's uncanny, really. Even like the intro song, even like the
Yeah.
paintbrush painting on the people, and I mean, it's so well done. And I wonder, in some respects, what it means for the show too.
Sure.
Is
Yeah.
where is this coming from? Because as we found out in this episode, I don't know that it's all. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's all Wanda doing everything. So whoever is manipulating this situation, like she even said in the show in the episode, I don't remember how this all started,
Right.
which I
Yeah.
thought
I
was
mean,
interesting. So
yeah.
the fact that it seems like somebody's doing this to her, or an entity has created this for her somehow. Um, but anyway, I don't know. It's uncanny, and I love the fact that they're doing it. But I understand it's got to be motivated by the story. There's a
It's
reason they're doing
uncanny. Yes.
sitcoms. There's a reason they're doing sitcoms. There's a reason they're going through the decades like this. There
Yeah.
has to be another reason other than just being sort of kitschy, you know?
Well, one of the things I wanted to point out, and I've been meaning to as we talked about the show, that was a nice little touch for me is because especially I think nowadays you can't really get away with it, but at least pre 80s, maybe almost pre 70s, anybody, and it was obviously mostly the dad figure or the male, anybody who had a job outside the house, it was very ambiguous as to what the hell they actually did. And I like that they had that in the first episode where Vision's like, what do we actually do? Do we sell anything? And it was all these like complicated catchword responses. And that was kind of, as a kid, is one of the things I'm like, what do they actually do at that company other than like sit around and talk about their home life, or worry about the boss? I mean, so it was kind of fun that they kind of
Well,
played that up. So
it's interesting you say that, but I always felt like Darren in Bewitched, he was in advertising, right?
yeah, that's true. That's
And
true.
and Mike Brady was an architect, although he designed a poor house with only one bathroom, but that's fine. Um, but yeah, so I feel like they had jobs, but they didn't. It wasn't about their jobs unless it
Right.
served a
Right.
particular story. And so the fact that Vision's work, whatever, is generic is just, I think that's a product of whoever is creating this reality, or
That could be. Yeah.
if it's being used from Wanda's mind, it's like Wanda has no concept of what someone does at a computer job. So they just,
Right.
like when she says, oh, Vision needed a break, he needed to be distracted, it's like he just go be distracted at a job because it's supposed to keep his mind occupied, right? So he doesn't think about the reality that he's in, and he doesn't try
Yes.
to figure out what's going on. So it doesn't necessarily have to be anything specific. It's just computers because he's a computer. I just
True.
figured that
True.
that's like, oh, he's a computer,
Maybe you're right.
he's an android, so he just has a computer job, a generic computer job. But the idea, even down to the when they turned on the computer and like the BBS thing popped up, I was like, dude, I've been there. I've been there, done that. It was
Oh
just,
yeah.
although it
When
came up really fast, it was a lot slower than that, if I remember. But
yeah, when he's like, let's look at the internet, and it was like, oh
yeah,
yeah, that's how you looked at the internet back then. But you're right, it was like much slower. Well, they were at a company, so maybe they had a faster
they had a
modem.
56K modem or something.
Yes.
So sorry, kids. It was a lot more difficult back in the day. Trust me.
So, but yeah, no, you're right in that. I mean, there is obviously the scene where Wanda drags the drone out of Westview,
Westview, yeah.
and confronts the sword agents, and is very much, uh, at least, coming across as being in control. But you're right. There's the moment where she's like, I don't remember how this all started, which I'm glad for, because it's showing that it isn't just her having a breakdown. I'm more open to that scenario though after the reveal of her, finding out that Vision's body still exists, and that there's an agency that has it in pieces and is probably trying to figure out how to turn him back on. And since they're a secret organization, probably with like no one else knowing about it, so I could see her being pissed about that. And
Yeah,
that.
definitely. I mean, the man she loved, who died, saving people, then is being experimented on. Yeah. But
Yeah.
here's the thing that's weird about that to me. I almost felt like that footage was fake in some way, because he's like, "Oh,
Oh.
I just got authorization to share this with you." It's like,
Oh, true. And
'cause
we
I
only
feel
saw
like,
like video footage. We didn't see. I mean, usually if they were gonna like, well, she did this, there would be like a flashback sequence, right? And there wasn't that. It was just all we saw of that was, a 4 grid video surveillance thing. So you're right, that could totally be
Well,
fake.
again, it could have been her doing it if she's being controlled in some way, or she's just pissed about it. I don't know. I agree with you though. I feel like there has to be more layers to her. She's not just upset, and she can't. We don't want it to devolve into her just, oh, I can't live without him. I mean, grief is a powerful thing. Plus, her brother's dead, and
Yes.
she basically lost her whole family. I mean, I saw something online the other day about how people are some people are like, oh, they're finally dealing with Wanda's grief because she's been grieving basically the entire time we've known her in the MCU. If you think
Right.
about it, because
True.
when
That's
we
true.
first meet her and Pietro, their parents are already dead, so she's
Right.
already bitter and angry about that, and she already hates Tony Stark. And the fact that she comes around and becomes an Avenger and helps everybody, it's still, she's not over it. She's not over the trauma. She's just not dealing with the trauma. It's kind of like, oh, here's an alien invasion, a distraction,
Well, then her
or
brother
whatever.
dies during that.
Right. Then her brother dies. Yeah. Ultron kills her brother. And then she's fighting, Thanos, and Thanos kills Vision. And it's like,
Right.
that could break somebody, I suppose. It could just be a psychotic break on her part.
Well,
And then finding out that they're experimenting on Vision, even though that's explicitly against what he wanted.
yeah.
He,
And kind of
he even
the
said he didn't want to be used as a weapon. So that was an interesting
yes.
turn of phrase, too. It's just,
Well, in the
I don't
it
know.
kind of I think there's some people that are like, well, there was 5 years she should have got over it, but she was snapped, so she came back with basically, I mean, she disappeared right after Vision got killed, and so from the moment she comes back, she's still carrying that, right? So you're right. I mean, it's like she hasn't had time because right after she comes back, they're back to fighting Thanos and his army, and yeah, I mean, so in what we've seen, she hasn't had time to really kind
Well,
of
that's absolutely
mourn
right.
and
You make it.
grieve
That's a great
everything.
point because Vision, whatever happens to her, whatever happens to Vision, she's basically sitting there on the battlefield when Vision has died like 5 minutes before that, and then she gets snapped away, and then she comes back afterwards, and basically, on your left, and they go to fight Thanos, and she even says, "You took everything from me." He's like, "I don't even know who you are," and she's like,
Right.
"You will," But then she
Yeah.
doesn't get revenge. If you think
Right.
about it, she's
Yeah.
denied her revenge and her retribution because she's not the one who kills Thanos, and so even though she seems okay at the funeral for Tony, she's still not okay. And she's
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
she's good at masking it. She's good at just, you know,
Exactly.
pretending and getting along and pretending like everything's okay. Like, unfortunately, like a lot of women have to in the world to bring out a larger context. So I think the fact that they're exploring this is interesting. And hopefully they'll get into more of her trauma and how she's dealing with it. Because I know there's going to be flashbacks to Sokovia and stuff. There has to be.
You would think. Yeah.
You would think, and how she gets her powers and whatever. But the fact that they're exploring this idea that she's dealing with, and this is how she's dealing with, maybe she's just working out her issues by doing this. But
Yeah.
but then they throw the curveball of I don't remember how this all started, which could just be I'm so mentally exhausted from keeping this all together that I really don't remember how it all started.
And
So
I
I don't
think
know.
you brought it up and we kind of agreed, but I think this pushes forward even more so that the guy in charge of Sword is a bad guy because he just is too quick and too eager to paint Wanda as a bad person, and I mean he even like secretly armed the drone with a missile. I mean it's like, yeah, something's going on where he wants to either push her in a direction to be more evil, or at this point something's gone wrong and he needs to get rid of her. So yeah, there's something up with that guy. He's not on
Well,
the side of the angels for sure.
that's an interesting thought because a lot of it seems like these are things that they're doing to her to keep her upset, to keep
Right.
her in
Right.
in the illusion. So if he's working with Mephisto or whoever it is who's created this thing to manipulate Wanda, then his job is to keep her going, keep her defensive, keep her upset. So the missile does that, and then later when Pietro shows up, quote unquote. You can't see me doing air quotes because it's a podcast, but
We'll
I'm
talk
doing
about that in a minute, but
I'm
yeah.
doing air quotes. But yeah, so that is another thing that I think is interesting that also sells the idea a little bit that something else is doing this because she didn't summon him. right? Because every other
Right.
time it's like, oh, uh, the neighbor comes with the doghouse because that's something Wanda's doing to distract Vision from understanding that something's going on. Even Vision's like, I expect the neighbor to show up any second with something we exactly need, and there she is.
Yep.
But then she doesn't summon Pietro, right? Someone else did. Something
Yes.
else did to throw a new wrinkle into things or to try to control her or to try to manipulate her into staying upset.
Yes.
It's a
So,
theory.
so before we get into that end
Yes.
part and a couple other spoilery things,
Yeah, go for it.
who do you think the was it aeronautical or aeronautical physicist or scientist that Monica was gleefully talking about and wanting to get in touch with?
Well,
Because that's obviously somebody.
I don't think it's
So,
Carol Danvers because she did not like the idea of people
well,
mentioning Captain Marvel. She's like, yeah, we're not talking about her right now.
yeah,
So
it's like
I think
whoa,
they
yeah,
obviously had, and that'll probably come up in the second Captain Marvel movie, but they obviously had some kind of break. My theory about that is that she somehow blames Captain Marvel for her mother's death. Like
oh yeah, probably,
somehow
yeah,
being around
absolutely.
her gave her cancer or something. I'm not trying to be gross about it, but maybe it's something like that.
That
So,
or why weren't you there
or
when mom
all
was
those trips into
dying?
space were dangerous, or all this
Yeah,
whatever. There's something going on there, which again I think we'll see in Captain Marvel too.
yeah,
But
yeah,
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 she does not like Carol at all.
yeah. So it's
Which
not Carol Danvers for sure.
no, I don't know who it could be. I was trying to rack my brain actually, and she did make a call,
Yes.
or did she get interrupted? She didn't quite finish the call, maybe. But so maybe that person will show up, and maybe that's the giant cameo they're talking about. Because Paul Bettany is still talking about, or was talking about it, like, oh, it's an amazing actor I've always wanted to work with, blah blah blah. So, I mean, some theories are like it's Ian McKellen's Magneto or something like that, which would be interesting too.
Mm.
But I don't know.
Some of the ones I've seen floating around is one Reed Richards, and that they use it, especially since she was talking about I need a a bunker that is protected against all this kind of
Oh, an
radiation
aeronautical engineer. Oh
on
yeah.
wheels, and it's like that could be Reed Richards and his pals show up and they volunteer to go in this thing, and that's what creates the Fantastic
I don't
Four.
know. I don't know
That
though,
seems a
man.
lot to put into this show. I agree.
Yeah,
So
and
I,
that's a movie. That's not a TV
yeah,
show. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but
yeah,
if
yeah,
they're
yeah.
gonna introduce Fantastic Four, it's going to be a gigantic theatrical motion picture. It's not going to be but that'd be great if it was Reed
Yeah.
Richards. I think that'd be
I
cool.
would
But
love it. That would be
it's like
fantastic. But I,
Krasinski shows up as Reed. Oh hey, what's up?
yes,
Can I help you?
yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, that's interesting. I mean, he's not an aeronautical engineer though. He's just a genius.
right.
Yeah,
So
that's fine. I don't know who it could be. Yeah, I don't know. I don't
I
know.
mean, everyone's still thinking Doctor Strange is going to make a cameo, but he's not
He's not
an
an,
aeronautical expert, so that
no,
seems
but
kind of
but
weird.
if this is a starting point for Wanda becoming the bad guy in I keep saying Mouths of Madness because that's a John Carpenter movie, but in Multiverse of Madness, Mouth of Madness is a crazy movie too. But so maybe Strange does show up in this show at the end, and maybe that's the thespian that he wanted to work with. Although he does get to work with, no, he doesn't get to work with Doctor Strange in any of the
No,
in the Avengers movies because he's dead
nope,
by then. So
yep. So
interesting. So
it could
we'll
be.
see. Could be.
I mean, I'm sure. Obviously, we'll get the reveal. I did also kind of want to mention. I like the moment where Agnes um, kind of because of Vision, she kind of dropped her line and then did the whole like, should I take it from the top, like to Wanda, and she's like, what? And then Vision's like, why was
Yeah.
she acting weird like that? So it was like, oh, I I didn't do my line right. Should I do it again? Blah blah, kind of
Yeah.
thing. So that kind of to me puts, because I thought maybe because Agnes the way she was might have been kind of secretly the person behind it, but that doesn't necessarily seem to be the case anymore either. So
No, I think
um,
Agnes is like everybody else, which is why she was trying to silence the neighbor the other time in the last episode.
yeah,
Like, shh, don't say anything, because I think she's aware more than other people seem to be. She's aware that they're in a simulation, if you will. It's on a holodeck or
yes,
whatever.
yeah,
Um, but it seemed like in this episode, she's very like getting more tired and more cynical, and it's like wearing her down. But also, she seems very, very terrified of Wanda
yes,
in some ways. So
yeah,
my feeling is that she's still in on it, but she's also being manipulated by whoever's manipulating Wanda. She's been forced in there as kind of like, you're going to go in there and keep her under control and keep Vision under control. And you're going to be
right,
like one of our control mechanisms that we're going to send in there to keep things going. but you're not doing your job as well now. So now we have to add another bit on top of it, and with the missile and whatever and sword, and now with Monica Rambeau, and now we have to add another thing on top of it with this other guy, the cameo at the
Right.
end of the episode. So
So
I feel like
maybe, yeah.
she's still in on it because she was aware enough to go, should I go back and do it again? Because none of the other people in town were going to do that.
Well, and there's the other factor of maybe it isn't completely Wanda or Wanda at all, because I mean even Wanda said, you know, how could I be controlling everybody in town, like making them go to work and brush their teeth and all this kind of stuff? That doesn't make any sense. I'm not anywhere near that powerful. And they mentioned that sword too. Is like her power level was nowhere near this. So how is she controlling this entire town? So
Right.
it may be obviously that she's not, and like you said, Agnes is, in on it and part of like, hey, we're not able to manipulate everybody, but we need you and maybe some other people in there to kind of keep everyone in character and keep this online, kind of thing. So
I still feel like at the end of the show, we're going to just pull back and Wanda's going to be in a tank and her brain is just hooked up to a machine or something. I don't know why I keep thinking that, but it's literally
uh,
all in her mind, the entire thing. But no.
yes,
Anyway,
she'll wake up on the island and
yeah, she's like, what happened? Because yeah, well, she brought up a good point, and that's also when she said, "How could I possibly doing this?" And I don't remember how this started,
yeah,
so there is something going on. But the thing that's cool is they still give the misdirect a little bit. I mean, she does manipulate things in her personal sort of reality, like the drone or like the helicopter or the Monica's clothes and things like that. But on a larger scale, she's not the one doing it. Although I thought it was interesting when she came out of the field or whatever and came to give the missile back. She had her old Sokovian accent, which I thought was cool too.
yeah, the accent. So here's a question I'll throw out there, and we don't
Yeah,
necessarily have to discuss it, but is Wanda who came out to confront the sword people, sword agents? Is that actually Wanda, or maybe that's who is really behind it? I don't know. So
yeah,
it's
because they were able. She was able to manipulate the soldiers to point their weapons at the director,
yeah.
or
So we'll see.
is the director just doing all of it? And because it's funny that they pointed them at him, but not at Monica and not
Right.
at Jimmy or anybody else. So it's
So
like,
that's
oh
why I'm
look,
like,
I'm not a bad guy. Look, I'm a victim just like you. So
well, so like my thinking on it is that's the person really behind it and did that as a warning to him. It's like, hey, don't try to end this or try to get cute again. Stay in your lane basically and keep manipulating stuff from the outside and leave the inside alone. So maybe I don't know. I'm totally wrong, but here's the
that's
thing:
it. That's interesting.
you and I know storytelling well enough to know you don't reveal like in the fourth episode of 9, your reveal of this is who behind it typically ends up not being the case, because I mean that's how you do your story. You don't give everything away in the middle of the story, right? There's always something at the end that's like, oh well, here's what's really going
Well,
on.
right,
So
because if she was behind it, then she'd just be behind it.
right,
So the fact that she came out and said, "Don't interfere. This is your only warning," could just be again her being controlled in some way to go out and do that. Because the other thing is if she's been somehow instrumental in creating some of this reality, she wants it to keep going because she has every quote, "I have everything I need or want," right?
right,
So
right.
she's not going to want to let it go. So at some point she made a deal with the devil or whatever, and if it's Mephisto, and they said, you can have everything you want, your heart's desire or whatever, in exchange for this. I want your power or whatever. And she's like, fine.
Right.
So she's going to do whatever she has to do to maintain the illusion that Vision's alive, right?
Yeah. That's going
So,
to be
but
harder, obviously. So,
it is. And now Vision's like, this is weird. I don't remember my life and whatever, which is interesting because what does that mean? I mean, he even had the Mind Stone in his head, right?
yeah,
When he said
exactly.
that. So it's like, he can't live without that, or can he? But he doesn't have any memory. He doesn't have any because he's not real, right?
Right.
If she manipulated the clothing to do whatever, then he's literally just an animated corpse acting
Yes.
the way that she wants him to act. But the fact that he's starting to question the reality is actually, I think, her questioning the reality.
You actually, that's a really good point, because we do have the moment in the episode where she tells the kids you can't bring the dead back. There's just
Yeah,
rules.
exactly.
And then right after that, Vision shows up. So maybe he's actually just part of her subconscious, and him questioning things and starting to break character more and wonder what's going on before is her actually doing that, and she's not able to overtly do that because she's under whatever spell or
Whatever
incantation or whatever's going
hex.
on. But her subconscious self, Vision, is like, yeah, something's not right here, and surely you should know this, which would have
Right.
even a more ironic weight to her going, you used to never talk to me in this way. So it's like, my brain, my inner voice never used to talk to me this way. What's going on? So
Well, he never did talk to her that way
right,
because Vision was a totally different person. This isn't
right,
Vision. This is her construct of Vision. Excuse me. And her brain basically saying the alarm, setting the alarm.
yeah,
Something's wrong. This is not correct. Look
yes,
what happened with Agnes. That's not weird. That's not correct. And the only thing that's interesting is that we're still following Vision around like he's a character. He does have his own POV, which I think is interesting.
yes,
So
yes,
that kind of goes against my theory a little bit because how would
true.
someone's brain have its own POV? But he could still. I mean, that's also could be a misdirect. But the point
Yeah, if
is
he's
that
just a manifestation of her subconscious, though, that would track. I mean,
I guess.
so
But I think the fact they had conflict, and he's trying to tell her something's wrong, and when he's like, "I'm scared, I don't know what's going on," I think that's also her too because she doesn't know what's going on a little bit. She has to know at some level that something's wrong, and so whether that's him
yes,
manifesting it or not. But it brings up a lot of interesting questions. But one thing I wanted to mention too is if you remember the vision board from last week, I'm calling it the vision board. I don't know why,
sure, sure.
but there was when they did a close up on the one character that Vision does with his mind and breaks him out of the spell for a second. They actually had that on the board that had already happened
Oh, interesting.
when they
Okay.
were describing the character, and they said, "Oh, Vision did something with it, whatever, and broke him out of the thing." But that was like the episode before that. So, but they're not out of
Ah,
order
huh.
because things are progressing. So I'm curious about how time works in the show because if that already happened, but then we just see it in this episode, is time flowing differently in the construct than it is outside?
Well, or is the show on a loop, or it does the same episode a bunch of times and then jumps forward or something? I don't know. Yeah, that's
But
interesting.
you know what I'm talking about, right? When he touches
Yeah,
the guy's head and he's like, "I got to
yeah,
call
you're
my, I got to
right.
call." So it's like that was already on the board from last week
Yeah,
when Jimmy
you're
put it up
right.
there. So I was just curious about that because Marvel's not stupid, so they're not going to put something like that in a show, knowing that everyone is going to analyze the shit out of everything.
They're not going to
By
leave a Starbucks cup in the shot. Is what
no,
you're
not
saying.
necessarily. But unless it's important for the story.
Hmm.
But the way they intertwine all this stuff, I have a hard time believing that was an accident. So there's something going on with time
That's fair. Yeah.
in the show. It's like Lost. Is this stuff inside the episode happening? Inside the TV stuff happening? Or you had a good point. Maybe it's all reruns. Maybe this has all happened before and it's all going to happen again. Or who knows? But it's just like a whole weird sort of because
Yeah.
the decades. I mean, time is passing differently in the show, right?
Oh yeah,
Because the
absolutely.
kids are aging up. Things are happening like that.
Yeah.
So there's something going on there, which I thought was weird. So again, I don't think it's an accident, but I'll be curious to see if it pays off, or maybe it's just maybe it is an accident. Maybe I'm wrong, but as a side note, I've seen some people talking about how they want to see a new X Files reboot with Jimmy and Darcy.
If they did a X Files esque show with those two in the Marvel universe, I would totally watch it.
Yeah,
Um,
I like them both as characters. I think that would be an interesting show. But I wonder if they'll spin that off because they're getting a lot of fans saying that already, which I'm okay with. So I think that would be interesting. But
I, I'll say this: I definitely want to see more of those characters after this, but together would be fantastic. So if this spun off, I mean, because let's be honest, I think like you said, WandaVision is probably a one season show. I mean, it's telling a story, so it would be kind of maybe they do a sword show afterwards and continue with these two and Monica to a certain extent, even though she's going to be in Captain Marvel too. But
Well, I assume this is more of a launching pad for a Sword show
yeah,
for Monica and them. So Jimmy can come work for Sword as a liaison, and Darcy could still work with Sword.
yeah,
I'm sure that's what's going to happen. In fact, I would bet money on it. But
I would love that. That would be great. It's like a season long pilot for that show, right? So,
well, it is. I mean, they're featuring Monica a lot, right?
yeah,
I feel like this is like, oh, these are all these characters that we're going to spin off. I mean, it's Agents of Sword. It's a whole new show. Why wouldn't you do
yeah,
that? You could
I'd be
totally
up
do
for
that.
that. And they could, you if you wanted an expanded cast, you could actually bring in some of the people from Shield if they're still interested in playing their characters and
Yeah.
mix them in. I'd be all right with that. So
Yeah, but it would have to be on Disney Plus now. It wouldn't be on ABC or anything.
yeah, yeah, that's all right though.
But that's okay. Yeah, I feel like that's part of what's going on here, because obviously, if we're right about the acting director of Sword, he's a bad guy, so he's going to go at some
Yeah,
point.
yeah, yeah.
He's going to be revealed and tossed aside or dead or whatever.
And then
So
Monica, I mean,
Monica will take
yeah,
over as leader as director of Sword probably. So
yeah, because it kind of hinted that he's like, you should have got it, but I did. So
right, exactly.
that should have been yours. Your mom wanted you to have it, so you got to
yeah,
pay that off.
and they
at
wouldn't
some point.
say things like that if it wasn't going to pay off later.
Yeah,
So I feel like she will become director of Sword because he's going to be a bad guy and he's going to get put down. Like
I
the
would
dog
totally
that he
watch
is.
that show. I would totally watch that show.
Well, I mean, it's already got a title. It's Agents of Sword. I mean, come on.
Yep, there we go.
So anyway,
Well, we should talk about the 185-pound mutant in the room. So
oh, I think he weighs that much. I don't know.
I don't know. Probably.
Yeah, it was an interesting twist, and we could talk about WandaVision a lot more, but I want to get to the Expanse. So
Oh yes,
let's talk about Pietro Maximoff.
that was just. I actually was not spoiled at all. I've been very careful about avoiding any spoilers for not just the Expanse that we'll be talking about, but also WandaVision, because I wanna be surprised. And wow, that was totally unexpected. I totally expected it to be. Now I can't remember his name, but the
Aaron
guy,
Taylor Johnson.
yeah, that played him in Age of Ultron, especially when they showed, from behind you could see his, white hair. I was like, oh, cool. They've sent Pietro in to calm her down, and then I was like, wait, wrong Pietro, or is it? Yeah. So
Well, here's the thing that's funny about that. Unfortunately, I knew Evan Peters had been cast in some role, so I assumed it was going to be Pietro Maximoff as because I know that Aaron Taylor Johnson was going to come back. But it's funny if you think about it, because in the continuity of X-Men movies, that's Pietro from the Fox X-Men movies from like the 80s.
yeah, exactly.
So it has to be him in a way. I mean, it could have
True.
been Aaron Taylor Johnson, but he's already dead. So that's funny that they brought him back as that. But I guess the real question is that really her brother? Because I don't feel like it is, probably, because because she says Pietro, and he doesn't actually answer the question.
Yeah,
He just says,
says,
"Hey,
aren't you going to give you? Yeah,
can't you hug? Can't I hug my sister?" Blah, So the fact that she didn't summon him,
yes,
or so she said, I don't think she really did. I think whoever's manipulating her brought him in to calm her down and not ask so many questions. Because it's whatever you want, right? She's got everything she wants. Now she gets her brother back too. So why would you want to leave this simulation if you got your brother back too?
So do you think it was a case of whoever wanted to bring him in was like, all right, so her brother's dead. Oh, there is this multiverse, and there's this other Pietro over here. Let's grab him. Do you think it's a case of that, or just that it's a complete
No, they could have
and...
gotten Aaron Taylor Johnson to come back easily, I'm sure, if they wanted to. They brought Evan Peters in for a reason.
Okay.
It has to be a reason. There has to be. It's a misdirect in some way. Otherwise, why bother? Why not just bring back Aaron Taylor Johnson?
Right. Yeah,
so the fact that it's
right.
80s X-Men, Days of Future Past, Pietro Maximoff, basically, there's a reason for that. And it's going to be revealed at some point. It's not Pietro, obviously. Just like Vision isn't Vision in this thing. It is literally her manifesting him, or whatever is doing this manifesting him, because there is a multiverse, and whatever creature, because it is called Multiverse of Madness, right? So whatever creature is creating this reality for Wanda to keep her happy and give her whatever she wants, can pull from anywhere, right?
So true.
So he or she or it grabbed the Pietro that made the most sense.
True.
And I mean, it's also good stunt casting, and even Darcy, she recast Pietro. I think that was really funny.
That was funny. So here's what I sort of hope happens. I mean, I think obviously, if this is going into the Doctor Strange movie, it's got to be kind of the beginning of the true introduction to the multiverse instead of what Spider-Man 2 was. But my my kind of secret hope, especially since they're kind of playing on kind of a meta level with TV shows and stuff like that, is that when this is all undone, it's like, oh, Vision's gone. It was like, well, who is this guy? This is not my brother. This is not Pietro. And it's like, and he's actually himself, the actor. And it's like, yeah, it's this actor who plays your brother though in these movies or something like that. Something cute.
That's funny. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be kind of fun because I know everyone's like, oh, it's Pietro from the X-Men movies. They're going to introduce the X-Men, but it's like, well, you can't at this point because if you do, by virtue of having him in there, if you're bringing the X-Men over, you can't recast any of them, right? So, because it's
no, I think this is just stunt casting. This is just a stunt for this show.
Yeah,
it's doing a couple of things. It's introducing the idea and reinforcing the idea that there is a multiverse. So in one dimension or whatever of the multiverse, this guy is Pietro Maximoff,
right,
and he's still alive. He
no,
didn't get killed in Sokovia. And
that's probably what they're going to do. But.
And they did it as a gimmick for the show because it's the '80s show and it throws a curveball to everything. Because the logical thing would be just to have Aaron Taylor Johnson because that's the MCU Quicksilver, right?
Right.
But he's dead. So they bring back a different guy who's alive to sort of lay the groundwork for the multiverse and for the idea that mutants exist. Because in that Fox universe, he is a mutant, and they actually said mutant, right? So
yes.
So that's okay to say mutants now. So this is just that, and then it's just a great stunt for the show, for WandaVision. But in the end of the day, it's not going to be him. It's not going to be. It's going to be something created for her as another thing to keep her calm, to give her everything she wants, because she says, "I've got everything I want." And so it's going to keep her in the illusion longer.
Yes.
So whatever creature is sucking her powers out can keep sucking them out, right?
I would just like the joke of, well, obviously they couldn't bring me my brother because he's actually dead. But who is this other guy they brought in for Pietro? It's like, oh, they went to central casting or something, some joke like that.
I'm Evan Peters. I play Pietro Maximoff in the Fox X-Men movies, but I can't. Now I can come onto Disney.
And then they could do some comment about, I never saw those. I don't think they were really popular or something like that. They can.
Then they all look at the camera and smile. Hey,
yes, exactly.
Break the fourth wall.
Or Darcy could figure that. It's like, where'd they get this guy? So. I don't know.
Well, I wonder if we'll see him on the board next week. It's like, oh, it's like some actor, Evan Peters. Weird.
Right. So, so this begs the question, though: do they bring back the real Pietro at some point, or not the real, but the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
No, he'll never come back. I don't think.
Okay.
This is a one-shot gimmick to kind of do something. It's because they're not doing it for no reason. They could have, like I said, they could have easily gotten Aaron Taylor Johnson. I'm sure they would have, could have paid him to come back. He would have been happy to come back.
Yeah.
So they did it for a reason, because it's the '80s, because of all this other stuff. It's just they did it for the multiverse. They did it for the yucks, and also so people would have something to talk about.
Yep.
Right.
Just like we are.
So, but it'll get explained. Right. It'll get explained, and it'll be because she doesn't recognize him. She's like, "Who is that?"
Yeah.
Yeah, so she doesn't know who it is either, and maybe Mephisto's like, "Oops, wrong multiverse. I'm sorry."
Yeah, that could be it. It's like, oh crap, I grabbed the wrong.
I grabbed the wrong one. Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, who knows? I keep saying Mephisto. That's only because that's the popular theory about who's manipulating her. Because in the comics, he's the one who gives her the kids and tries to take her powers and all that stuff. And
I know, but other than what Wanda's doing, there's been no. It just seems like there would have been more clues at this point, like some sort of deal with the devil comment, or I don't know. There's nothing that links.
Well, maybe that's too. Maybe that's too.
On the nose.
Well, no, maybe they don't want to get too.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying maybe they don't want to get too Christian. You know what I'm saying, or make too religious in the show. It's like what they're talking about in the Thor movie. It's like, what is magic? It's just technology we don't understand, right? So they're going to come up with an idea that Mephisto is like a supercomputer or something. I don't know. It's going to be something else. He's going to be like Thanos. He's going to be a big entity, but his magic well, because of the Mind Stones, because of radiation, because of all this other stuff, right? Because that's where the Big Bang created the Mind Stones, created all the Infinity Stones, and that's what gives people their powers. It's not because of magic, quote unquote. So
True.
Mephisto's not really the devil. He's just a creature who can harness this chaos magic or whatever, right? Or chaos
Mephisto has
power.
been a TV producer, and that's why it's this. And he's going to be played like by Bruce Campbell. That would be perfect. So anyway,
Well, that
no,
would be funny. That would be funny, actually. But it's yeah, it's going to be somebody, and it's going to happen. I don't think they're going to have. I mean, I don't think the Ian McKellen thing is going to happen because they've already
no,
had a character from those movies. So
yeah.
it's going to be something. It's gonna be like Charles Xavier or somebody. It's like Sir Patrick Stewart or whatever. But Pat Stew. I don't know. I don't know who it's going to be.
Reed Richards. I think it's going to be Reed
You think it's
Richards.
okay? It could be Reed Richards, but then Reed Richards played by who?
It's got to be Krasinski. I don't think it's going to be. It won't be a Fantastic Four origin thing, and we won't have unless they name check them. It won't be the rest of the characters because you're right. You save their origin story and everything for a big budget movie, but having just one of them, Reed, or even Sue, because she was a scientist in her own right. Having one of them show up, I think would and the crowd goes wild. That would just be like, hey, listen, Fantastic Four is going to be in the MCU. I know we
Yeah,
mentioned the
and it
movie,
will.
but here's your first taste of it, and we'll go forward with that. So,
Well, that's true, but this show is doing a lot of heavy lifting because it's also got to introduce the conflict between her and Doctor Strange.
I
I
think
think it's more likely we're going to see Doctor Strange show up in the show.
I don't think he's going to be so because they've already talked about. They've already said that the very last episode is going to have stay till the end after the end credits because there is going to be a stinger, and I think that's just going to be the cameo of Doctor Strange, like, hey, I'm here to help, or Wanda, I need your help. One of the two. I don't think he's going to show up for
He's going to come
like.
through a portal and go. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say the fate of the universe is at stake. She's like, again? Oh,
Yeah.
come on.
Oh, again, fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
maybe,
so
or he shows up because she's just gotten out of control and just destroyed a bunch of things, and he just shows up and goes, "This is not going to work out," or whatever.
yeah.
You can't do this, Wanda. He's like, "Oh, watch me," and then that's the end.
Yeah, and then it'll be Wanda Maximoff and Doctor Strange will appear again. Will return in.
To die another day or something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. So
exactly.
I think
Yeah,
I think
I
that's
agree
when
with
he's
that.
going to
But
show up.
that's
So
and again, that could just be hype on Paul Bettany's part too. But I would bet that it's going to be something like that. And so that means maybe is there another cameo still hanging? I guess we'll find out.
is Evan Peters a thespian? Maybe he's the one that
I
Bettany
feel
was
like
talking about.
I feel like if they were talking about something like that, they're kind of on the same level as Evan Peters. Don't you think?
Yeah,
They're not.
yeah.
He's not more famous than they are, and they're not. I mean,
Well,
they're probably more
and
famous than he is.
Elizabeth Olsen did say that's right. That's her name. Yes, she did say there was a Luke Skywalker
This is
moment
what I'm saying. I don't
in
think
this.
this is a Luke
So
Skywalker moment
no, I don't think so either.
because if you watch that, everyone in the world knows who Luke Skywalker is. They're like, "Holy shit, it's Luke
Right.
Skywalker!" But it's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, Evan Peters as Quicksilver." Okay,
Well, I had to explain
cool.
it to Melanie because she was like, I was like, "Holy cow!" And she goes, "What? That's her brother, right?" And I'm like,
Right, and if you have to explain it, it's not a Luke Skywalker moment.
"Right." So I explained it to her, and she was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
you know, so you're right.
So there's
That's
got to
not.
be something
Yeah,
else.
yeah, yeah.
There's got to be something else. So, all right, let's switch to the Expanse.
Yes, yes. We have 2 episodes to discuss.
2 episodes to go for. Okay, first of all, and you were talking about that tracking shot. That was a great tracking shot. Let's be honest. I love the fact that Amos is just like he's the man. I love the fact that he's self-sufficient, but the fact that he also clearly needs the rest of the people.
Oh yeah, and yeah, he's like, I know where I belong now.
Yeah,
This is where
exactly.
I need to be.
I can function, but I'm far too, like we talked about this before, I'm far too violent and far too removed from morality when I'm alone.
Yes.
I need my soul, or I need my check. I need Naomi and I need Holden, like parts of my body or parts of my brain to keep me in check. So
Yes.
yeah, but it's a great episode. The fact that they go to the mansion to get the ship to go up to Luna. It's a really good episode. There was nothing I didn't like about it.
I'm always a sucker for the technical aspects of stuff. So like that tracking shot in particular, I noticed as it was happening, I'm like, this is a tracking shot that On the outset, there's no cuts, but then this is a show that I read about after every episode because there's always like, is the science real? Is this real? And stuff like that. And that tracking shot was shot in 3 different locations, and they put it together where it just looks like one continuous. It was beautiful. I'm a sucker for long shots for cuts, but I also like am a fan of trying to find out where, because there's cuts, and trying to find out where the cuts are. So like when something black passes across the screen, it's like, well, there's a cut. Or when the camera spins around, it's like, well, there's a cut and stuff like that. So, and it was difficult to find that in this. There's a lot of dark moments, and it's like, okay, that could be a cut. But the fact that it was done on 3 different locations, but put together seamlessly, I appreciate those kind of things, and I thought it was pretty fantastic. So
It was, yeah. I mean, you
yeah,
can do a lot now with computers, Joe.
I
You can
know
you can
that, but
fix things. I mean, it's not like the old days. We were just talking about Touch of Evil, where they had to do it all on a crane and drive the crane, and they had to move stuff out of the way and turn the room around, and do all
I
this stuff live.
don't ruin the magic, man. Come on.
I'm sorry. Well, it's still
It still
magic. I'm
takes
not saying
craft, and it
it
still
does. I'm not
takes,
saying that the computers don't take craft. They do. Someone had to visualize this, and someone had to do it. But yeah, it was still. I like these kind of things too, especially during action scenes, because it brings you into the moment more. I think if you're gonna have a lot of cuts, then
yeah,
for me that takes me out of it a little bit. Like Michael Bay movies, too many cuts for action. It's like, oh, okay, now I'm noticing the editing and I'm not following along the story, and there's a place for that too. But in something like this, where you're basically with the action and with the fight, yeah, it was really well done. And sure, it's sometimes hard to follow a little bit because it did get kind of dark and did get
yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
But it's chaotic. It's like the chaos of war, right? That's what I like about it too. And the fact that Amos gets nicked, and he's like trying to carry people, and he's fighting and doing this
yeah,
thing, and
yeah.
they come in, and Peaches has already like killed a bunch of dudes.
I liked Eric's comment of "I'm never gonna piss her off again" or something like
Yeah, no
that.
shit.
It's
It's like
like,
she just ripped these dudes apart with her bare hands. I'm like, wow,
yeah,
that's interesting. But I guess the question is, stylistically or from a story standpoint, Amos is a main character, so you're going to go with his POV of things,
yes, yes,
and you're not going to see what happens with Peaches because she's, it's more important to stick with him because what he's showing in this part is his, because he never would have done this before, probably, but he's evolved, right? He wouldn't
yes,
have picked that other person up and tried to save them,
yeah, exactly.
but he's changed
Yep.
because of his association with Naomi and Holden and everybody. He's become more human. It humanized him, and he realizes that I need to save this person because he was a loner, a callous loner his entire life. He wouldn't have done that before, and that's why we're with him during this scene. Other than it's cool looking, but we're watching him basically change in real time, almost like I'm going to save this person because now I do that. Now
Well,
I give a shit about others.
and the great part is too on this arc is via his expressions you can tell how much how much he relies on other people to help him remind that, because Peaches along the way she's like, well, we're not going to leave these people behind, and he's kind of like, god damn it, because he realizes, yeah, she's right, and this is what, if I was with Holden, this is what we would do. And he's like, yeah, we can't leave these people behind. So that whole arc going from, when he first, early in the episode season where he encounters Eric, based on who Amos was, Timmy, Eric's like, don't, if I see you again, I'm going to kill you. To in the final finale where Eric's like, hey, I'm going to go do this thing. I'd like you to be there. Right. So it's like, even he sees how much Amos has changed, but
Yeah, definitely.
that Peaches kind of helps reinforce that he needs some reminders, but a lot of the stuff he does, you're right, in that whole fight getting back to the ship, he does on his own. So it's really cool seeing how far. I still say he's my favorite character on the show, but it's a
Well,
show full of amazing characters.
Yeah, he's come a long way. I think that in this situation, Peach is just sort of a stand-in for Naomi, right? Because Naomi's his
Yeah,
conscience,
yeah,
and
yes,
so she's reminding him of his humanity. Which, going back to Baltimore, he kind of was starting to get submerged again a little bit,
yeah,
and he's like, "Yeah, I gotta," we talked about this before. He's like, "I gotta get back to my people, my crew."
yeah,
So she's a stand-in for her a little bit, and helping remind him of his humanity, but he needs the constant reinforcement of Holden, who's like, I mean, I'm going to say it's almost like a father figure for him, really, if you
Oh
think
yeah,
about it.
yeah,
Even though
absolutely.
they're the same age practically, but Holden is like the first. I think it's like the first male in his entire life that he can look up to
Yes.
and want to emulate because he's never had that before. And Naomi's like a mom he never had in a way. Because
Yeah.
Amos, in some
Yeah.
ways, is still a child, if you think about it. He's
Yep.
very childlike, even in his expressions and his emotions. He's very child. He's very black and white. So it's interesting to go back and watch the show as he evolved. Like I watched an episode where they're on series, I think it was, and there was something going on, and they're like, oh, we can't let the Amos is like, we can't let these people in because they're going to kill us, and
Right.
they can't save a bunch of people. And like Naomi's like, no, we got to save him, and he's like, no, we can't do it. She's right, and then Naomi drugs him and goes and lets people in and lets them decide, we can only take
Yes.
50 people or whatever, and then he's like, you know what, she was right, and he figures it, even though because he doesn't get back at her because normally he would have gotten angry about that because he got drugged and and didn't get to do anything. But he doesn't have any reprisal against her because he realizes, even in his Neanderthal brain, that it was the right thing to do. So yeah,
Well,
I'm fascinated with his character. I think
well, that
he
informs, like what you were just saying, completely informs, like,
he's
yeah,
had the
sure,
most
we're going to
interesting
take
arc.
everybody on the ship that we can, right?
Well, exactly. And originally, but even at that point, he's like, yeah, we can't take these people. And she says, yeah, we're taking them. He's like, okay,
Yeah, he's like, damn it, you're right. Yeah,
damn it, you're right. Yeah, and there wasn't as much of a fight, and she didn't have to drug him, and didn't have to do
yes,
anything. And then he's on board because
yeah,
he knows that she's right,
yeah,
and he says, "Okay, just be here, whatever, or we're gonna leave." But that's his like moment of defiance. It's like, well, this is a stupid idea, but fine, we'll just do it. But don't be late,
right.
assholes. But that episode was good. I mean, it was a little predictable that someone was going to come by and try to fuck with them and then come back. That was,
Of course, yeah,
that's, I mean, that served the story, but you knew it was going to happen.
yes,
The
that was a little
opportunity. Well,
bit too much by the numbers, but yeah,
just give us all the medical supplies and the food. Everything's going to be fine. We're going to take it to a point of central distribution. Yeah, okay, whatever.
well, I like the Amos is like, well, you can bring it all here.
Yeah, just
We'll
bring
look
it
after
here.
it.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
look after it.
just bring
Yeah.
it here. Yeah,
Yeah, I honestly think that a lot of the times the show is just written to give him interesting things to say like that. It's like, I got time right now. How about now?
well,
I'll fuck you up right now.
the best part at the end of the finale, that conversation with Holden. Hey, remember that time you were going to kill me?
We're cool, right?
Yeah. All
We're
right, we're
cool now.
good. and then
Yeah.
and then the woman that tried to kill him shows
Yeah.
up, and he's just like, "What the fuck?"
She's gonna hang out with us for a while. So yeah, that was a funny point because I mean, if we're gonna talk about the finale, then that was a much needed bit of humor for that
Yes.
episode because whatever your feelings about the actors, conduct in his personal life, which obviously, if all the things are true, he was being a terrible person and by
Yes.
every reason should have been fired, which he was. I'm talking about Cass Anvar, obviously.
Yeah.
But the fact that here's the thing: when I was watching that episode, I didn't understand that what happened to him, and this is a spoiler for the finale of Expanse if you haven't watched it, but
Sure.
I didn't understand what had happened to him until after in the next scene when they're talking about once they rescue Naomi and they're talking about it. I didn't quite understand that on first glance that is what happened to him.
Oh, I see. I got you. Okay.
But the other thing is, I mean, he had to have acted that scene, right?
So I think no, I think it was a composite. I think the tracking shot behind him was probably a stand-in, and I think and they digitally put in the blood, and then the front scene was just a kind of paused scene that they were able to manipulate a little bit because he didn't have any motion other than zero G stuff. So I don't think they knew because they had finished shooting this season
Well,
well
that's what I was
before
wondering.
all this.
Did
And
they
I think
finish it? So they had to go back and do a lot of pickups then because there's a lot of talk about how he's not around anymore, right?
well, so I think because that was very minimal. So I think like the scene with Holden and Naomi was because they pretty sure about a month or so ago as they started shooting the sixth season. So I'm wondering if they just shot that in a block for the sixth season and dropped it into the episode in place of whatever scene was there.
Well,
And
it's
then they
not just
mention
it's
it
not
when
just
Amos comes on board, and that's
yeah,
about it,
it's not just that, but it had to have been the scene with Amos too. Or I mean, they could just done
And
pickups
then
for that, but
And then like the scene with Avasarala when she tells Bobby she's sorry, that bit of dialogue is heard, we have Ava Sorella has her back to us.
Well,
So
that
I
was
think they
ADR
just,
probably. Yeah.
I think they overdubbed that, and so and they did. And if there were any scenes at the end with him in it celebrating with them, they obviously either had to digitally pull him out, or maybe they cleverly found enough footage where he wasn't visible. So
Well, I mean, she doesn't in the
it wasn't
celebration
planned
scenes.
when they shot it. I think
She doesn't. Avasarala doesn't specifically call him out. I mean, they're just sitting
yeah,
around, so he could have been
yeah,
digitally removed from that easily. And she's like,
yep,
"Well, this is what it's all about. This is what they don't want." I mean, it
right,
still worked. I
yeah,
mean, the thing is when she says something to Bobby, when you're behind her head, Bobby doesn't really react.
right,
So it's like, she's like, I mean, I know she's a stoic Martian, but I feel like they had more of a relationship, and she would
yeah,
have reacted bigger, which is why I knew that was fake. But um, yeah, I mean, they got around it really well. But
yeah.
I think that's why it was a little slightly unclear to me what happened to him when it happened, because Bobby's trying to talk to him, hey, blah blah blah, and I thought there was something. What I originally thought was that he was looking at a thing of Naomi's physicals in her suit, and like that was like a baby that died.
Oh, I see. Okay,
I don't know why that came to my brain, because her
interesting.
being deprived of oxygen killed the fetus.
Oh, I
That's what
see.
I was thinking. Is like because that was Holden's kid or something, and so I thought that was going to be a thing, because the way it kind of looked on the screen is it almost looked like a baby.
I wonder if that was like maybe the original plan, but they altered that because they're like, well, if we kill Alex and kill a baby within 5 minutes of each other, that's kind of dark. Maybe we don't want to do that, and they just kind of erase that. I don't know,
Right.
but
Well, I'm
that's
wondering.
possible.
Yeah. I mean, I could. I mean, obviously they can fix the screen in post and redo it, but it just that's what I thought. The reason he was so like bummed out and not answering, because he saw the fact that the
Oh,
baby had died. I thought that's why he was so quiet. I'm like, she's like
no,
calling
he's
him,
stroked
calling him.
out. So
Well, no, now I
I
realize
know.
that, but
You know what? And I thought that was a fitting way for that character to go. I mean, because he's like, I'll save my people no matter what, and
he still died heroically for sure.
yeah, and they mentioned a couple times, and Holden and Naomi had the discussion about Alex, and that I like that they were able to honor the character while at the same time exiting the actor from the show. So I thought it was well done. It wasn't there was no like tearful montage and all that kind of
Well,
stuff.
it makes more sense to
But
do it this way than it was like, oh, let's just not have him come back. He just
yeah,
disappears.
he decides
Oh,
between seasons. Oh, I reunited with my family and I'm going to stay on Mars. Right? Yeah, that would have been dumb.
I mean, you could have done that, but I feel like they were more. They have to be more clever than that, and they were. And I agree with you. It was a good way to send out the character. I know that Alex Kamal has more to do in the books than
Yes.
he does here, but that brings up a question. They won't recast him,
Right.
so they can never bring that character back. So who is going to be the new hotshot pilot of the Rocinante?
Well, we have a few candidates. It
We do.
could be Peaches.
Is
Um,
Peaches a pilot?
no, I think she's more kind of a mechanic like Alex, Amos.
Like
It
Amos,
could
yeah.
be Bobby, because she was co-piloting with him in some of
Yeah,
the
but she's more of
episodes.
a she's going to work with Avasarala now, so I doubt she's going to be on the Rossi, right?
She could be still, or it could be the dude from Tycho Station that was on
That's
board.
what I thought. It could be him, maybe, but
Yeah.
I don't feel like he. I don't know. I kind of feel like that wasn't developed at all, and it didn't really fit in with the dynamic. Obviously, it wasn't developed because at the time it wasn't going to happen. So
Yeah, I mean, he did some decent piloting, so
he
maybe
did.
like, hey, you want to stay on board, kind of thing.
Well, I'll be interested to see what happens, and then that reporter just disappears too, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I did like the dude from Tycho, the security guy who stayed on the Rossi, because to me, because he wasn't totally on board with Fred Johnson, and he wasn't like the acolyte that everybody else was, and he was pretty much like, well, this doesn't make any sense, and we just can't do that. I kind of expected at some point he was going to be a bad guy or come into conflict more so with Holden, but
Well,
you
yeah,
know,
I thought he was going to betray Holden at some point and just say
yeah,
this is not going to happen, and they're going to have like a standoff in the ship, but they didn't. So
but he kept doing the right thing. So if he were to join as like the pilot, I'd be all right with that. I liked his character. I thought it was a good um, multi-dimensional character. So I'd be all right with him sticking around. And
Yeah, he was cool. He was cool. I liked him, and I mean, it could be, you know, obviously they got Peaches coming in to sort of sub for the loss of Alex, but
yeah,
she's not going to be a pilot. But now they have two girls instead of one, so that's good.
yeah,
But New Blood is part of the show because if you, I'm sure you remember this, but in the first season, what's his face got killed, right?
yeah. I mean,
The doctor just got killed by
Doctor.
shrapnel.
Yeah, like in the second or third episode, and he was
Yeah,
even in like the opening credits as a main character, and then boom. So it happens. We've lost characters along the way too. So it's not out of character
whatever.
for the show for
Yeah,
Alex to die like that. And you're right. I would rather it be in trying to save Naomi than they come back next season. It's like, oh, he met a tragic accident with an asteroid or something between seasons. That would be kind of lame. So
well, they could have done. I mean, they could have done something like that where they get the message that he stroked out or whatever
yeah,
during a whatever he was trying to help out something,
yeah, they could, but
or he got
it's
murdered and it was some kind of plot. That's the other thing I was thinking. They would end up. He would be like the first of the crew. Someone's trying to get
oh,
the crew or something. So they would like they'd have
retaliation
to,
by Marco. Yeah,
maybe, yeah, maybe, or something. But I
yeah.
noticed that Marco and his son didn't have that conflict that you thought they were going to have. But I
No,
guess it's
they
still
did
possible.
not.
They seem to be
Yeah, I
coming
suppose.
together more, or if Philip is biding his time, where he's going to
Oh, it
like
could be.
kill his father at some point. But yeah, I still think as much as I like the show, I think it's a great show, and I will watch it until it's done. I think Marco Inaris is not a great villain.
I don't either, and
He
that's the
doesn't.
part that's bugging me out of a show that has such rich and awesome characters, and even bad guys in previous season. I mean, I would rather it have been Anderson Dawes being the leader of the Free Navy
Yeah, why
because
didn't he come back? I would have liked to see him again.
they keep mentioning him, and I don't know if it's because of Jared Harris is too busy to come back, but um, he just and I can't completely say it's the writing of Inaros, but it kind of is. But I think the actor is just not a very
He's not.
good
He's not.
actor.
He's not dynamic enough.
No, he's
And it's
too. He plays it too two-dimensional, and so either the writing isn't good enough for him, or he just brings that part down. I don't know what it is, but I don't. He's the weakest part of the show right now to me, and I'm like, I
yeah, it's
wish he had
unfortunate.
wish he had been killed off.
Well, I
Um,
think if you got people around you that are so much better than you, like Dominic Tipper
yeah,
and Kara G and all those people, they're so much better. They're so the characters are so well realized and they're so good at. I mean, Kara G's playing drummer and she's like 9 months pregnant, and
yeah,
she's still kicking ass all over the place, which is great. It's hard to rise to that level. Even the kid who plays Philip, I thought did a pretty good job
yeah,
with his
yeah.
sort of with what he's getting. I don't think it's so much the writing. I think it's just that character is not interesting enough to me. But I think yeah, I hate to say it. I hate to say bad things about actors and whatever. But I don't think he's just not dynamic enough. He's no
Yeah.
Jared Harris. He's not David Strathairn. He's not any of those people. He's no Fred Johnson. I mean, all those guys had like more gravitas. This person, if people are going to follow him, he has to have gravitas. He has to have leadership
Yeah.
qualities, and he just seems like a petty little bitch to me. And he's just not. You know,
Exactly. Yeah.
he's almost like too pretty in a way. I don't know. I'm not trying to physically insult the guy or anything, but it's just I don't know if it was great casting, and I'm with you. I'm sort of disappointed in a way that he's the bad guy, the big bad. Um, but really, if you think about it, it's not. He's not the bad guy. It's space that's the bad guy, right?
Right.
I
Yeah.
don't know, or something, or it's the aliens through the portal, or
Well,
whatever the hell happened at the end of this the
that's
series.
what I was just
What
going
what?
to say. So what
Yeah,
happened at the end? Did that ship just get annihilated or what happened?
I don't know, but it was cool looking.
Yeah, it did look cool because they just suddenly paused and then seemed to kind of swirl into a red mist and go away, and then there was some kind of distortion on the ring. So did
I think that's just transit. I think they just transited the ring, but it was
okay.
weird to me. That was sort of a weird thing too. I feel like because of what they had to do with Alex, I feel like that episode kind of got fucked up a little bit because that they cut back to that ship with the two people we haven't seen in like 6 episodes. Like, who are these people again? And
Right.
now they have an important thing to do, and now they're going through the ring. They're doing all this. I feel like they had to shoehorn that kind of in the end a little bit, and so it wasn't as developed as it could have been. Um, but I don't blame them. They had to do what they had to do. So
Yeah,
they're
they're
going through the gate,
suddenly,
and then is there
yeah,
like they have another molecule, and there's like alien life form on the other side of the gate. There's like another gate now apparently, which I forgot about. And
there's
so
multiple gates inside
yeah,
that gate,
and
but yeah.
so they're going to a new place to make a new Mars, which I guess made sense. And he explained it a little bit, but then they're like, some kind of religious zealots where you can't wear a thing on your wrist or whatever from your mom. You can't be sentimental. I'm not sure what's happening there.
Well, that part was like we got to follow the letter of the law, and regulations say no personal affectations, and I think it's just kind of that's part of controlling someone, and you remove anything personal and make them adhere completely to, it's kind of like the Nazis. There's no, you don't get to wear colorful stuff. You're going to
So it's
wear
like
this.
it's like a cult basically.
Well, yeah, and it's like
So
how
that guy's a stand-in for Trump, is what you're saying.
yeah, well, yeah, and it's kind of how you keep absolute military and control. I mean, it's like you're gonna adhere to the rules that we tell you 100%. And if you hesitate, that's you're out, and you're out in a
Right.
permanent way, kind of thing.
Right.
So
No, I that makes sense. I just wonder. I mean, how does it serve the story in the future that they're going to be this militaristic, or they're
well,
going to be
yeah,
this
and you're right.
strict?
That whole thing at the end just seemed to come out of left field. I mean, they introduce. You're right. They introduce those characters at the very early parts of the season and do nothing else with that story. I mean, Alex and Bobby are going to, follow that one ship to investigate drug trading and all this stuff because that's what they
Right,
suspect.
and
Obviously, it was
they
yeah,
sold the ships to Marco, but it's like you never see these characters again, and then all of a
yeah.
sudden they're like it's super pivotal to the story at the end. That's what I'm saying. It kind of felt weird at the end. So
It seemed like, oh, you know what? We forgot to set up the next season. It's like,
well,
well, but yeah, now we don't understand what you're setting up. It doesn't make any sense. That
well,
did seem
you're gonna
weird.
come back for next season then for sure. But
Yeah,
but yeah, that's it. My question is, it's on Amazon, so length of the episode is not as much of an issue probably. So
sure.
I feel like it's not a problem of we just didn't have the material to do whatever. But I definitely feel like there was a different edit of this episode, obviously. So maybe this was more, from a flow standpoint. Maybe this was just more. There was more to it. But yeah, I would have revisited this a little bit. But it's like, oh, those people. But again, it's a hook for next
Yeah,
season.
yeah.
So you don't have to know everything. It's just what is happening. So I'm going to come back and find out. But yeah, going through the gate was freaky. No, I don't think they're destroyed. Otherwise, why set up the whole thing in the first place of this militaristic society, whatever? We're
So
going to start a new Mars, so they're going to come back. They're not
do you
dead.
think it's their point of view of what happens when you go through the gate or something like that? It just seemed weird. I'm like, why did they just suddenly freeze and then they swirled away into this mist? I don't understand that. I mean, maybe that was stylistic, but we've not seen that kind of wistful transiting. I mean, it's usually based in science, and what actually happens in space. And I understand it's an alien gate that you can't say this is real or not real, but it just, I don't know.
Well,
It
right, because
was
when people have gone
strange.
through the other gate, that's not what it looks like.
Right, right. So I'm like,
It's a different gate. So I'm wondering if there's something. Yeah, I feel like they're not going to spend time setting up these characters and then having this whole scene where we have to follow the rules and you have to take that thing off
and then
and
they're
like
dead.
and then you just kill them off.
Yeah, yeah,
That doesn't make any sense.
yeah,
So either they're going to be like transformed somehow, or it's something with the proto molecule, or it's something weird, or they're getting absorbed by the alien creature that's in the clouds at the end, which also was like a weird tacked on thing for the credits. I was like, why is
yeah,
that there?
yeah.
So that was kind of freaky too. Why not just show it? Because again, I wonder like length of the episode shouldn't be an issue. So you could have just shown that and then gone to the credits.
Yeah, or at least expanded upon that a little bit to give us
Because you
maybe
saw
more
that, right?
information.
It's like all of a sudden the clouds kind of part and there's like an alien ship or an alien
Yeah,
creature or whatever
yeah.
the fuck it is that like hanging in the clouds. But again, is it just like, or it's, sorry we killed a popular character. Please come back and watch our show. I don't know. Because people are,
maybe,
I don't know.
maybe.
I don't know if you spend much time on the internet, but some people are angry that Alex is dead. So
Really? Oh, I wouldn't
it, it,
wouldn't have
it might,
guessed that. So
it might surprise you to know that they're probably mostly, dudes. But anyway.
white
Well, I don't know if they're
dudes,
white dudes, but I don't want to say that. But I'm
but
just,
it's mostly dudes.
it is, yeah, from what I've seen. And again, that's not a representative sample of anything, but I'm sure some people don't understand why he left the show. I mean, if you follow James S.A. Corey on Twitter, which I do, it's
Yes.
kind of interesting to watch the people that react
Yeah.
and say things, talk out of their ass a little bit about things they don't know about. When clearly, I feel like they went to great lengths to find out if all this stuff was true, and found out that it was true. In fact, there's probably more to it than anybody will ever know.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
they took appropriate steps. Now, sure, no one went to jail. No one got charged with anything yet, or whatever, or they won't. I don't know.
Right.
But it's a job. People can be fired for any reason. You know,
Yes. Yes.
you're at will, as long as you're honoring the terms of the contract. They have no, you can be fired for any reason. And I'm sure he had a contract for the final season. I'm sure they're gonna have to pay him.
Oh yeah.
So it's like he's getting let go, just like you get let go from a show for any reason. Like your character's not working out or whatever, then you just get paid off, and that's what happens. That's how the entertainment business works. Now, granted, this is a different case because there was some, of what he was being accused of. And
Sure.
but you don't. But the thing that people don't understand is he doesn't have to go to court, and he doesn't have to be charged by the police. He doesn't have to be anything.
Right.
The allegations are enough, and the investigation they did was enough to make them think that they had a case. Because otherwise, if they fire the guy, he could sue. It has to be
Absolutely.
airtight.
Yep.
They have tons of lawyers going, yeah, we can get rid of this guy. So it's not like they did it on a whim, on a weekend, like, fuck it, let's fire that guy.
Yeah, it's like, we've heard some stuff we shouldn't have around. It's the same thing, with, grand jury indictments. Those things usually don't come down unless they're fairly positive that they have a case.
They have
and
a slam
somebody's done
dunk,
something
yeah.
wrong. Right. So
People
same thing with
understand that.
this. You're not going to fire someone from a show based on if one person said, well, I didn't feel comfortable around him. It's like, okay, well, let's talk about this and blah, blah, blah.
Well, no, the way the way it works, they have the contracts have options. There's an option for another season. They're not going to
Yep.
pick up your option. It's not like they're
Yes.
firing anybody.
Right.
We're not picking up your option for the final season.
Yes.
You're probably going to still get paid, I'm sure, and you probably, whatever. Now, does it seem bad for him? Sure, it does, and it's unfortunate. But if your behavior caused this, then you're the only one to blame for it.
Right, exactly, and it's
It's
and
not.
I know
It's not Amazon's fault. It's not James S.A. Corey's fault. It's not the producers and writers of The Expanse's fault. It's the actor's fault for being an asshole. If that's what happened.
well, and here's the thing: the general public isn't going to hear everything, and I am positive that in at least 90% of all the things that have happened in the last few years, the person fired or dropped by their manager or dropped by their agency or whatever, it isn't just because, well, there's allegations, we should get rid of them. It's these allegations, we have substantial evidence that this did happen. It's like, Marilyn Manson. Let's go ahead and talk about that. I mean, I get, because several other women came forward and probably presented evidence that was like, yeah, this is what happened. They're like, okay, so his label and his man, they didn't just drop him because Evan Rachel Wood said, hey, he hit me, and that was it, right? So it's not, we as the public aren't going to be privy to all the details. We shouldn't be, in my opinion, but I know people are railing against, cancel culture. All it takes is somebody saying something and you get, fired or let go. It's like, I'm telling you, it's more than that behind the scenes.
Well, it's for people who say that don't understand how the law works. For
Right,
example,
right.
You can't just. I mean, yeah, most employment is at will, which means you can be fired for any reason for anything. If your employer doesn't like the way you smell one day, I mean,
Right.
But the problem is, if you have a contract or if you have an agreement or if you have if there's been any kind of precedent or if you've been there for a long time, you still have legal recourse in a lot of cases. So lawyers for big corporations like Amazon are not going to just say, yeah, go ahead and fire somebody because he's an asshole or because
Right.
one person said something. There's like,
Yes.
they did an independent investigation who found cause, and then they were able to let him go or not pick up his option or whatever. Because I don't know the deal points of his contract. Nobody does
Sure.
except the people who know.
Right.
But they're not going to do that. I mean, lawyers' jobs are to cover their own asses and to cover the ass of the company. So they're not going to do it unless there's a reason and 100 reasons where they know it's airtight. They cannot
Yes,
be
exactly.
reprisals. There cannot be legal recourse on the other side. So the thing with Marilyn Manson, it's like allegations are just allegations, but the record company, there's probably a morals clause in people's record contracts. There still are.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's like if you have the hint of impropriety, or if there's more than one allegation, or and in this case, allegations are enough because, in our opinion, you're violating your morals clause,
Yes.
or
Yes.
whatever the deal points are. But contracts are both ways, and there's always going to be language in the contract that says how it can be terminated. And in Marilyn Manson's case, maybe in his contract it says it can be
Yeah.
terminated by either party for any reason.
And it isn't going to, but again, it isn't going to be because, well, this one person kind of hinted that something hinky went wrong. They're not just going to say what they are going to. I mean, Evan Rachel Wood finally named him. Apparently, she testified before Congress not too
Yeah,
long ago.
and she wouldn't say his name then, but
Right.
then she
And
finally
then
did.
now
Yeah.
she did. And then as soon as he was like, no, that didn't happen, many other women came forward and said, yeah, it did. And it happened to us. So it's like at that point, you know, the
Yeah,
record label's like, we don't want to be part of like whatever investigation
right.
or trial.
People are like, oh, it's censorship or it's this or that. It's like, well, he's free to
No.
get another record
Yeah.
label, or he's free to, do his
Yeah.
albums himself or whatever. The people are like, oh, you're canceling people. It's like, no one's being canceled. And the people that are complaining about being canceled are the ones that are on like fucking television saying, well, I can't get my, I don't want to get into politics or any of these assholes that are talking about that. But
Yes.
it's like, I can't have my book published. And yet here I am on fucking TV talking about how I'm being canceled.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
What?
So
You
yeah.
have a huge forum. You're on a freaking news channel and you're talking about stuff, and yet you're
Well,
complaining about not getting your voice out there.
Well, that was like with
Yeah.
Trump when they were like, "Oh, all the social media things,
Let's not
have
talk about
blocked
Trump.
him.
I don't want to.
He has no forum." I'm like, he had the biggest forum on the planet at a
Yeah, he's got
moment's notice.
100 reporters in the fucking press room who
Right.
would,
Go
anyway.
say whatever he wants. But yeah, we
Yeah,
shouldn't talk about it. But
let's not do that. Yeah,
I,
I just
I think kind of the telling thing too about people should pay attention to is like in Anvar's case. Um, I've seen, you and I have seen, everybody has seen before where it's like, oh, so and so on this show has been accused of this, and their castmates and their producers are like, they're the best person, they're great, we stand behind him and stuff. Nobody did that in this case. They all said, we trust the process. Let's see how it will,
right. They said the exact thing that their lawyers told them to say.
Exactly.
You
So it's
can't
kind
you
of
can't
like,
say you can't say, oh, we believe in him, we can't defend him, and you also can't condemn him. What you have to do
right.
is be neutral,
Well,
which is
so a
which
lot
is
of that
exactly what they did.
too seemed to be like, what I guess, yeah, maybe I shouldn't speculate, but it's kind of like, yeah, we always kind of knew he was making inappropriate comments and jokes and stuff, and it's like, so obviously there's more going on than we knew.
Well,
So,
you know as well as I do, if you spend like making TV or whatever, you're spending a lot of time with somebody.
yes,
You get to know what kind of person they are
yeah,
probably, and you go to conventions with them, you go to events with them or whatever, and you get to know what kind of a person they are in their private life. You go have beers or whatever. It wasn't a secret. I would bet money that it wasn't
yeah,
a secret among the crew
absolutely,
and the
yeah,
cast and whatever. And it took a lot of things for it to come to light and a lot of investigation. And they did the producers and the companies did. I got to say, they did the smart thing to have more, even another investigation. They didn't just believe the rumors or the
right,
speculation or whatever. They had another investigation. They did everything they could because I feel like they wanted to keep him on the show if they could, if it was not
oh
true. I
sure,
feel like they gave
yeah,
him every benefit of the doubt. And obviously, in their mind and in the minds of the investigators and everything, there was enough to say, we've reached a threshold of too much. And
yeah,
so now we have to make a change.
yeah,
And I'm sure it wasn't made lightly,
absolutely not, yeah,
but it's a business. At the end of the day, it's also a business. You can't have this much of a controversy. I mean, especially these days, and that is some effective cancel culture. Not that I don't like to call it that because that's not what it is, but it is in the sort of world zeitgeist or whatever. You can't have this on your show.
right,
You can't have the hint of it on your show. And so, yes, I'm sure that played in a little bit, but I feel like the majority of the reasons had to have been this is actual shit that happened, and we can't have this on our show anymore, and we can't be
yeah,
associated with it. So we got to make a change. So, but we're just speculating. We don't really know.
We don't
And I'm
know,
not
but
saying that he did anything or didn't do anything,
right.
but he's not on the show anymore. And I think that the way they sent off the character was very well done. They didn't
Yes.
say, fuck this guy. We're going to have him do something stupid and get rid of him. We're going to give the character a good send off, a heroic send off.
Yes.
The actor's going to be gone, and we're going to go on with our lives and keep making our show. So
Yeah. Yeah.
they made the best of a terrible situation for everybody, including the people that were that were victimized by him. If that's what happened. So
Absolutely. So
well, I've got to talk around it because I don't not that we're going to get sued, but I don't know what happened, and I can't say I do.
I
If
have
I
no
don't,
idea.
so.
I'm just saying that I get everyone cancel culture, and that's a stupid phrase, and it's like no, people that are doing are exhibiting bad behavior are getting called out on it. I mean that's
Well, yeah, it's
you know
consequence culture, right?
yeah
You
it's
can't do
what
bad
happens.
shit forever and expect no one to say anything. And now people are
Yeah.
more aware of it. Maybe
Yes.
um,
Less
is there
tolerant of it.
is
Yeah.
there yeah exactly is there the potential for abuse of this situation? Sure. Can someone
Absolutely.
say something about you that's not true? Yes, but that was the case before. But if
Right.
there's one person saying something bad about you, that's one thing. But if there's a bunch of people coming out of the woodwork and saying, hey, you know what? This happened to me too. No one wants to get on the bandwagon, especially women who want to get on the bandwagon of saying, I was sexually assaulted or something, because that's not something they want to share.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
imagine they like to keep that shit private because people are dicks about it when they come out with it. So the fact that people come out with it and say something, it has to be meaningful to them because otherwise they would keep it secret like a lot of people probably do because it's embarrassing and shameful and they feel bad about it like they did something wrong, which
Right.
obviously they didn't.
Yes.
And so
It's not a
it's just
career highlight.
no,
It's not
it's not
something you use to.
to
Uh,
get ahead. Yeah.
yeah. No. And I know people are saying, "Oh, they're just doing that." It's like, yeah, that's not how that works.
They're doing it for attention. I mean, are
Yeah.
you kidding me?
Yeah. Right. It's like
Who the
really
fuck wants
okay.
that kind of attention? Nobody wants that kind of attention.
Yeah. So
I
yeah.
think
No.
their
Yeah.
motivation is because, ass, this happened to me and I don't want this fucking guy to get away with it anymore.
And everybody deals with it in different ways. That's the other thing. Why didn't they come forward for earlier? Because it's demoralizing, it's embarrassing, and it's not something you want anyone to know. But eventually, some people get to the point where they're like, you know what? I've heard that other people are. I'm pretty sure in Evan Rachel Wood's case, it was like, I'm not the only one, and I think if I take the brave step and gear myself up and do this and come forward, this will help other people too. And I'm in a position where I can help other people, so I should do that. And like I said, everybody deals with it in different ways. It's not something where you're like, okay, this person abused me, I understand that, and you move on. It's a part, especially if it happened at a young formative age. It's something that's with you for your entire life, and
Yeah. It's not
and
something you
it
like to talk
isn't
about at parties.
and it isn't something that ever goes away. And I'll say I'm speaking a little bit to personal experience for this, but it's something that is there in various degrees, and there may be years where you're like, I don't even think about that, and something, I don't know, triggers it. I hate to use the trigger word, but it's true. Something triggers it. You see something. There's something I saw in a movie recently that informed and reminded me of something in a big way that happened when I was a kid, and it was traumatic, and it was weird, and it was something that I was watching for the second time. I didn't even catch it the first time. The second time, it just kind of hit me like a cricket bat in the face, and it was like, wow. And it's something I've dealt with and I'm okay with, but that is still, even if it's something that you've gone to therapy, something you've talked about and you've worked through and you're in an okay place, there at any time it could sideline you, and you're just like, oh wow, and you're right back in it. And so it's traumas and things like that. A lot of it will come out of what we've gone through with COVID. Traumas and major things in your life are things that are always with you. They, thankfully, most people, and there's ways that you can work through them so they don't control your life and don't, beat you down, but they're never gone. So yeah, that whole thing of like, why didn't they come forward earlier? It's like, fuck you, right? So
Yeah.
anyway, I didn't mean to turn this into a
No, it's
therapy
okay.
podcast, but
That's
I think
good,
it's an
and we
important
should
thing to talk about.
we'll put something in the show notes, and we'll also say that if you have experienced this kind of trauma and you have experienced anything in your life and you need help, you should definitely reach out because there are people
Yeah,
that will help.
yeah. I
Um,
mean, uh, I've seen people I don't know on Twitter and Facebook. Like, hey, I'm going through a tough time. This is what's going on, and you know, they're friends or I follow them, but they don't really know me. But I've even I'll drop us something in there. It's like, hey, if you ever need to talk, I'm here. I know you don't know me, but I'll be a listener, and I encourage people to do more of that. It's like if you see somebody struggling on a post on Twitter and Facebook, don't play it off as attention getting or that they're just going through a bad time. That may be the big I need help kind of thing. So,
yeah, that could be their one time they're going to ask for help. Yeah.
yeah. So, don't hesitate to say, hey, drop them a personal message or something. Just say, hey, listen,
Yeah,
you know,
definitely. I've done that a few times, and so far, no one has really taken me up on it. Which
me either. Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's good. I
I checked
suppose.
up on them though afterwards, like, hey,
Yeah,
glad to see you're still posting. Is everything good? So,
yeah. And
but
some
yeah,
people, I think it's partially like, is no one's listening, no one's hearing me, no one's no one gives a shit. So I'm going
right.
to put this up here and see if anybody responds to it, and people do, and maybe that's enough. That's all they needed at the time,
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
feel lonely. They feel alone, especially during COVID and whatever. I've seen a lot more of that. I think people
Absolutely.
just saying, it's like a checking in. It's like, is anybody, I've been alone all this time. Is anybody out there, or you know, does anybody give a shit that I'm alive or dead? I mean, and so people respond and go, yeah, if you need anything or whatever, and then that's enough for them. And I don't expect to get a response. I'm not doing it, you know,
Absolutely.
to make myself feel better. I'm just
No,
saying
no, no.
I'll just sit there and listen or respond or whatever you need. So so I'll just put this out there right now. If anybody's listening to this and they do feel down or they want to reach out for help or whatever, you can find Joe or I online. We're online all
Absolutely.
the time.
Yep.
I met Chris Yu at Twitter, and he's at What Joe Writes. You can send us an email. You can talk to us, whatever you want. We'll do our best to help you if we can. I mean, we're not
Yeah.
professionals, clearly. We're not professionals at anything, not even professional podcasters, basically. But
Exactly. I don't even professionally speak, so
I'm not a professional speaker of any kind. But if you just want someone to listen, or I can certainly dial a phone number for you, or I can give you a phone number for a place to get help or whatever. So,
yep. Don't
um,
hesitate to ask for help. Don't
yeah,
hesitate to offer help. That's
exactly.
I hate to, I know we're all in this together, but it's true, and it was that way before COVID, and it's going to be that way after COVID. So don't hesitate to ask for help. Don't hesitate to offer help. So
You're
that's
not
my
alone.
message. That's my pick for this episode.
Yeah, exactly. Mine too. You're not alone. So
Yes. Yep.
don't feel like you are. So
Yeah.
anyway, anything else you want to talk about for the Expanse, or we pretty much covered it? I hate to try to circle it back to a more positive topic, but
No, I
you know
think
what? It's I don't want to stigmatize that though. It's not like a negative topic to
no.
talk about mental health. That's not what I mean. It's just people think it's a downer and they're like, oh, I don't want to talk about that. It's boring, but it's not
Well,
boring to the people going through it. So
same token, I don't want it to be like, oh, here's the two guys that talk about some fiction show, and now they want to you know talk about real life stuff. What the hell? And it's like
it's not what I signed up for. That's not
yeah,
the shit I want to do.
exactly. So
So
no, I think it's important, and we talk about important things on this show from time to time, and this is now probably more than ever a very important thing to talk about. So, but yeah, as far as the Expanse, I don't know. I think we've talked it out. I would imagine because I'm going to rewatch this season for sure, and probably do a rewatch of the show before
yeah,
the next season because it's going to be a
definitely.
while. So I'm sure we'll have some more to say. I mean, one of the early, I think it was the third episode of the season where Naomi gets kidnapped, or right after. I completely glossed over the fact that episode was directed by Thomas Jane. So
Yes.
our old
Yeah.
pal Thomas Jane is back
Tom
on the
J.
show, even though he's not in front of the camera. He was
Will he
behind
be
the
wearing
camera.
shoes, though, I wonder? That's the question.
Probably not.
Probably not.
Every
It's
con
okay.
I've seen him at, he doesn't wear shoes. It's great.
Yeah, every time I've ever seen him, yeah, he's shoeless. I mean, I know he can afford shoes, so it's like he just doesn't like shoes, which I appreciate. He's like a hobbit, maybe.
Yeah, no, he's a great guy.
So, yeah, I did want to point out one thing, or make a shout out to Dominic Tipper's acting during this season. I thought,
Yes.
she was great. she's been really good before, but I thought this really showcased her story in a very good way. You know, she's become a really really good character in her own right, not just as a sort of control mechanism for Amos. They've all, I think, come a long way since the first season. They've all evolved, which I think is one of the things that makes the show so good. It's the hard science and the science fiction and the political intrigue, but basically all the characters, Avasarala, Holden, Naomi, Amos, everybody has evolved and changed and become better people and more interesting people because of their interactions with each other. And that's, I
Yeah.
think, the idea that they've created this surrogate family and they're all better together is one of the core things about the show that I respond to so much. It's such a well done thing, and I wanted to shout out to her acting this season because it was
she was
excellent.
amazing. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I
so
think you and I talked about this early on in the season that we were kind of against, not against, but it was like, they're splitting up the characters. I like to see them together, but I think it really serve the characters well because every single one of them, even like Drummer, who I guess, well, she's the main character now, but
yeah, she'll be back.
Drummer, Ava Sarala, and then our plucky crew, everybody got some really meaty stories and a really good opportunities to shine and show us what they could do, and that whole feeling of, I don't like them being separated quickly went away once we got into the meat of the stories. So now them all coming back together, it makes it even more, exciting that next year, hopefully that,
Well,
they'll be
yeah, I mean, it's
together
like,
as a crew and going
yeah,
forward. So
if you take the show as a whole story, right, all the seasons are one big story arc. This is the point where, they were at their weakest, right?
right,
And we're basically into the third act now of the final season, where it's like they've all come back together where they'll be at their strongest to face their greatest enemy, which
yes,
is, whatever. So it makes sense. You had to split them apart
yep,
to make them realize how important it is to be together and to also work out their own shit. Because Holden couldn't have gone with Amos to go to Earth,
no,
or Naomi. He had to work his own shit out. And Holden had to work his own shit out. And Naomi had to work her own shit out with Philip and survive on her own to prove that she's strong. Because if you think about it, she's kind of relied on other people a lot. And
yes,
so the fact that she could do all of this and she believes in her abilities and believes in herself and was also willing to sacrifice herself to save other people. And
yeah.
so, and jumped into space twice,
Well, and
crazy.
I really loved that the characters are multi-dimensional enough and well written enough that Holden at the outset was like, "Do you want me to go with you?" And she's like, "I got to do this on my own." And he's like, "Okay." And it was like, wow,
Right.
that most lesser shows, it would have been like, "No, I got to stand by you and I'm coming with you," and then kind of stuff. And she's like, "I got to do this on my own no matter what happens." And he was like, I will let you go and let you go do that kind of thing. Not that he had
Right. Not that you
permission
had to
to
give
let her
permission.
go,
Yeah.
but yeah,
But
that
it's
he
about
was, okay.
it's
Yeah.
about trust, right? It's like he
Yeah.
trusts her to know what to do what she thinks is best, and she trusts him, and they trust Amos, and Amos trusts them, and now they're gonna have to trust Peaches too,
Yeah.
which would be an interesting dynamic because the other thing that's great about a show is how you can introduce new conflicts. Because if you have the same characters together, then usually there's not that much conflict between the main characters, right? Because they're all together as a team. So you
Yes.
have to keep bringing in other things. So the fact that they're bringing Peaches in, who tried to kill Holden, is going to be a whole new dynamic for the final season, which I think is interesting. How
Yeah.
they're going to react to that, and what will Amos do? Is he going to be on Holden's side? If it's a Holden versus Peaches thing, I don't know. So
Yes. Exactly.
it's a new wrinkle, which I think is how you keep things fresh and how you keep things going. Because conflict, as we know, is one of the staples and the most important things about drama. You need conflict.
Yeah.
So whether
And
that's internal conflict or external conflict or man against nature or man against whatever. So you need now in this one you got all the conflicts. You got space as a conflict. You got internal conflict. You
yes.
got conflict with the Belters, and you got all this stuff. So it's
Well,
gonna be great.
and it's kind of like the consequence of necessitating having to kill off Alex is that story wise that raises the stakes because it's like, well, even the main characters aren't safe anymore, right? So that's kind of in the back of everyone's mind. Is like, wow, that's me. He's been
Well,
here
yeah,
since the
usually,
beginning and he's
yeah,
dead
usually
now. So
characters make it to the end, right? Like the main
right,
cast usually makes it to the end,
yeah,
or for the most part. So the fact that now No one's safe. Something could happen to I feel like, if I'm just going to speculate about the end, I feel like Holden's not going to make it. I feel like he'll sacrifice
Yeah,
himself at the end to save the universe or something. And I'm just going to say that right now
or
for this
Amos.
episode. I think Amos survives. Amos is a survivor, dude.
Yeah,
He's going to survive everything.
I think after this arc, he's kind of he knows his place, and I don't think he feels like he has to like redeem himself or anything like that. But Holden's always been the one like, yeah, I'll step through the airlock to save the
Holden is
universe.
the savior.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
going to sacrifice himself to save the universe.
yes, okay,
Just like what's his face did earlier in the show. Oh my god, I forgot his character's name.
Miller.
Thomas Jane's character,
Yeah,
Miller.
Miller. Yeah.
Miller made a sacrifice to propel things to their eventual conclusion, where the only choice is for Holden to mind meld with the protomolecule or whatever, and sacrifice himself so the aliens can discover humanity and not want to destroy us or something.
All right.
I don't know. I've never read the books. I'm just
I
speculating.
haven't either.
But I feel like him being the sort of moral center of the show is like, because he's the guy who always knows what to do. He's the guy who always has the good ideas, who's pretty much always right. And I do like the fact that he's sometimes wrong now in this season in particular. He made a few mistakes,
Yes.
but so he's not infallible, but he kind of like takes on everything, the sort of morals of the world, of the universe, and kind of like it takes a lot on for himself. And I think that will be his sacrifice at the end of the show. Because if you think about it, Holden is a character who had an entire family, like a whole group of people that sort of created him, right?
Oh yeah.
He's like a melting pot of humans. And so he represents humanity in a way. So he's gonna, and I'm reaching, I don't know, but
That's kind of come back though. You're right. You know,
there's kind of, it's like a bigger context maybe for
Yeah.
him. So I think that ultimately he'll make a sacrifice for everybody, and that'll be it. And then he will. You know, if I'm being cliche, Naomi will still have his kid. I think that maybe she'll have his kid in this season or something, and so Holden will live on with
Right.
and baby Holden will live on with his his new surrogate family, right?
Yeah, and you know, Holden has
Anyway.
never been one that is like, here's impossible odds, we can't possibly win. He's like, well, I'll go out there, you know. So
Yeah,
you know,
personally, yeah.
yeah. So I'll go do this. So yeah,
Well, like he's a guy. I mean, like in the season before this, he went into the alien temple and wanted to talk to them, and he was not afraid. He's not afraid. He's like, I
Right.
want to do this. I need to make the sacrifice. I need to. It's on me.
Yes.
I got to do it. So
Exactly.
I feel like that's my prediction. Anyway, we'll see what happens. But this show has gone on long. We should probably wrap it up. So
You're right. Yeah.
anything else you want to say before we go, or should I call it?
Oh, I think I've said enough.
Yeah, you have. You really talked a lot in this episode. So
Yeah.
all right. So find us on the socials, like we said, at theflickcast.com, on Stitcher, on Apple Podcasts, patreon.com/theflickcast if you want to throw the show a few bucks. Like again, Joe is on What Joe Writes on Twitter, and I'm at Chris U on Twitter if you want to reach out for any reason.
Please do.
Please do. And if you like the show, that's great. We appreciate it. If you want to give us a review on iTunes or even a rating on iTunes podcast, that would be great. Thank you. All right. So for Joel Dilworth, I'm Chris Ulrich. That was the Flickcast. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, everyone.